स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतङ्गमय। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। Let us offer our salutations to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the Supreme God incarnate, who came to establish universal religion. Let us pray to Him to lead us from the unreal to the real, to lead us from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. Today's topic I have chosen, true wealth. It's very natural. People are aspiring for acquiring wealth. It's perfectly all right. But what type of wealth we are seeking, that's very important to know. There are lots of things in this universe. God has created opposites. Sweet fruits, bitter fruits, good and bad. Everything has its opposite. Happiness, pain. They're all mixed up. So the whole universe is a mixture of the three gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas. We are all bound and guided by these three gunas. So when we are chained by these three gunas, that means we are bound by Maya. So there is some force which is binding us on to this world. But why God has bound us into this world? See, just as we also would like to play, so also God wants to play. The whole creation is but the game of the Lord. It is described in our scriptures, Leela Kshetra. This universe is the Leela Kshetra. God wants to play. He wants to enjoy the fun with His creation. So He has created all things and He has given most beautiful human body and all the senses, vibrant, vigorous, full of emotions, ambitions and good intellect, mind. The whole thing is given. And freedom. So having given all these things, God wants to see us how we play our part in this world. So we have to understand the working of the universe with this perspective. It is only through learning that we pass through this world and enter into spiritual realm. First of all, we must know that our true entity is in spirituality. It's because of our false ego, false identification with ourself, we are undergoing never-ending suffering. So one such suffering is also the cause of our misunderstanding or not properly understanding the value of the wealth. What is the true measure of wealth? That we should know. Most cultures today would have us believe that wealth is measured by how many material things we own, how many properties we have got, in how many states, how much of bank account I have got. So, people think wealth from this point of view. And many of us feel discontented and dissatisfied. The mandate to consume and buy more and more translates into a desire that can all too easily become a bottomless pit. There is always connection between our never satiating desires and the wealth. This simple, powerful story may help us to think differently about money, reconnecting with our source of inner peace and true wealth. There is a story to show it to us how this material wealth is a cause of tremendous suffering. There was a very wealthy businessman. He lived in a very palatial house, but he had a very good childhood friend. He loved him so much, but he was poor. Though he was poor, he was very happy. This poor fellow had a loving wife who adored him and greatly appreciated how hard he worked to provide for the family. So there was perfect peace and harmony in the family of the poor. Though they have very little money, still they are contented. Santushto yena kenachit. Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. Being satisfied with whatever God has provided us. Not desiring anything more than what we have. To be contented with. That's a spiritual quality which we should all cherish. The more you are contented, the more you are qualified to enjoy peace. Whereas the rich man was a successful business person, but his activities were quite different. He would spend many evenings away from home, socializing and finalizing business deals. Every week there would be 2-3 meetings, conferences, seminar calls, conference calls, all these things, just to enhance how much more he can become rich. Sometimes he would feel disgusted with his way of life, and he was quite envious of his friend's simple lifestyle. And this rich man began to think himself, what's the point of having all this money if I can't really enjoy it, if I can't have really peace of mind? My friend may be poor, but is enjoying a wonderful life and a family. Sometimes I wish my life could be more like this. Just a thought came to him in this way. So somebody suggested to him, well, if you want to be more like your friend, just give some of your money to him. He was tickled with the suggestion and decided to give his poor friend very huge amount, $200,000. a small fraction of what he had. He just gave. Now you see how the trouble started with that poor fellow. As soon as he got the money, gift, just a gift from the rich friend, the poor family became very ecstatic. They thought the money was the best thing that could happen to them. When night fell, they began to worry about how to safeguard their newfound wealth. Should they put it in the drawer? Someone might steal it. How about under the mattress? Some people keep money under mattress also, where the income tax people have raided and found out huge sums of money under the mattress. So that did not sound like such a good thing to hide. So they were worried about their future. They hardly got a wink of sleep that night. It continued some time like this, becoming restless, more tension oriented, more worried. After a few days, this poor family, who were once very contented, now they began to argue about how best to use the money. Each one has his own idea. The wife wanted to do one thing, while the husband wanted to do something different. So clash. Their fights almost destroyed their marriage. There was total disharmony and noisy atmosphere, quarrelsome atmosphere in the home. Upon reflection, they realized that all their problems had started when they took that money from the rich friend. So finally they were wise enough to decide to return that money to the rich man. So there is a valuable lesson here for us to learn. Money, no doubt, is very important, very essential. Without money, no one can survive. Money can solve many problems, undoubtedly, but it can also create many new ones. How it creates problems? If the money falls into the hand of a person who has no character, then it creates problems. Our happiness depends more on our personal integrity and how we feel about ourselves, as well as the quality of our relationships, etc. One great philosophy we should always remember. We came into this world. Did we bring anything when we came? We came empty-handed. And when you leave this place, when you leave this universe, when you leave this world, when you die, do you carry anything? Nothing. You come empty-handed. You go empty-handed. Then why so much of noise about things? So, the scriptures say, we can't take anything with us. But there is one thing which we may like or we may not like, always comes with us. And that is karma. Only karma shadows us everywhere. Whatever we have done, good or bad, the result of those actions always follow us wherever we go. We can never escape from the doctrine of karma. While this may sound obvious, many of us do not necessarily take it to heart. Lord Buddha shows us by example, a good way to relate to our wealth. He was just as happy with a simple robe as he was with a royal garment. He enjoyed the food that he collected from his alms rounds as much as the food that was offered to him when he was a guest of honor. He could sleep under a tree and yet was equally at ease in a royal palace. Buddha was always at ease with his circumstances. The distinctions of rich and poor, coarse and fine, or fame and rejection had no bearing on his inner peace. It is one thing to be poor in a monetary sense. It is quite another to be lacking spirituality. All too often we look outside of ourselves in our pursuit of wealth, when the greatest wealth of all is right within us. Every one of us has that most wonderful treasure in us. The store of treasure within our hearts and minds is inexhaustible. And it is up to us to mine this internal wealth. If we know how to recognize and apply the treasure within, we are wealthy in the truest sense of the word. So we should know what exactly that true wealth is. Upanishad says, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says in one of the passages, Dvayaha Prajapatyaha Devascha Asurascha. Verily there are two classes of the Creator's children. Both are God's children. Gods and demons. Two categories. Bhagavad Gita also says the same thing. In chapter 16, Lord Krishna says, Dvau bhuta sargau lokesmin daiva asurayevacha. There are two types of beings in this world. The divine and the demoniacal. Now Krishna himself explains what is divine wealth. It consists of 26 attributes. These are described in the chapter 16th of Bhagavad Gita. Abhayam sattva samshuddhihi jnana yoga vyavasthitihi dhanam damascha yajnascha swadhyaya tapa arjavam. Ahimsa satyam akrotaha tyagaha shantihi apaishunam daya bhuteshu aloluptvam mardavam rirachapalam tejaha kshama dhritihi shaucham adroho natimanita bhavanti sampadam daivim abhijatasya bharata. These three verses, 1, 2, 3, chapter 16, Lord Krishna has clearly defined the most wonderful qualities which are the true wealth of a person. So we should cherish to acquire this wealth, not the other thing. One is fearlessness, purity of heart, steadfastness in knowledge and yoga, almsgiving, control of the senses, sacrifice, study of scriptures, austerity and straightforwardness. Then not causing harm to anyone. Truth, absence of anger, renunciation, peacefulness, absence of crookedness, compassion towards beings, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, absence of fickleness. Then vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, purity, absence of hatred, absence of overweening pride. These belong to the one who is born with divine treasures. So this 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is called Division between the divine and the demoniacal. Divine treasure or the nature of the gods, Daivi Sampat. It has got wonderful end result. It leads to moksha. That is liberation. It leads us from never-ending suffering. It releases us from the rounds of birth and death. Whereas the worldly treasures, the fake wealth, leads us to bondage and never-ending suffering. So, having said this, Lord Krishna says, you must cultivate these divine qualities. You must equip properly. Then only you can go joyously into spiritual realm. So divine nature must be accepted and cultivated. The demoniacal nature should be abandoned. So all these qualities, both demoniacal and the Daivi Sampat, the divine qualities, both are there in human beings. Everyone has got these two. There are sattvic people who possess the divine attributes. There are among human beings those that are endowed with asuric qualities, who are filled with excessive tamas. In an ordinary person, there is a mixture of three gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas. As I said earlier, we are all under the grip of these three gunas. Sometimes we are more tamasic, sometimes we are rajasic, sometimes we are sattvic. Tamas and rajas pull a person downwards. Sattva lifts a person upwards. Tamas and rajas lead to bondage. Sattva helps to attain salvation. So, it is taught that we should discipline ourselves properly and develop sattva, become sattvic. When the mind is sattvic, there is calmness in it. Divine light can descend only when the mind is serene and cheerful. The sattvic man controls the senses. He does self-service. He practices japa, concentration, meditation, self-analysis, and also he keeps on inquiring, who am I? He meditates on the inner self. He has no attraction for outside things, for sensual objects. He has intense desire to attain moksha. That means strong aspiration to get release from this terrible suffering of the world. He is humble, generous, merciful, forbearing, tolerant and pious. He destroys his little personality. These are the qualities of a sattvic person, where sattvic guna is predominant. Whereas a rajasic person is very proud, intolerant, egoistic, lustful, hot-tempered, greedy and jealous. Everyone is terrible. He has got all these things in a big measure. So you can imagine, how can such a person really enjoy peace? He can't. He works for his own glory, fame and self-aggrandizement. He develops his own little personality. There is an intimate connection between the gunas and the karmas. The nature of the karmas depends upon the nature of the gunas. A sattvic person will do virtuous actions. A rajasic and tamasic person will perform non-virtuous actions. It is a guna that goads a person to do actions. The self, the true Atman or Brahman is actionless. He is a silent witness. Whatever you are doing, the constant witness is our innermost self. It is always seeing us, what we do, what we think. Divine Sampat enables the aspirant to attain the highest state of superconsciousness, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, wherein the seer and the seen are united in one. Meditator and the meditated have become identical. If you read Sri Ramakrishna's life, you find how he could attain Nirvikalpa Samadhi. When he entered into that state, he felt ecstatic. The whole truth was revealed. So, the aim of our spiritual practice is only to make us rise from tamas and rajas to sattvic state, to establish ourselves, to stabilize ourselves in sattvic gun. That is the practice of spirituality. And once we are stable in that quality, then everything opens up. Among the divine qualities, fearlessness stands foremost. Fear is most terrible. It is an effect of ignorance. Identification with body causes fear. Blind attachment to things of the world is a cause of fear. The sage who has realized himself is absolutely fearless. There is an episode recorded. It has happened. The great Alexander, who conquered the whole world, most of the countries, he was passing through Kashmir. He was returning back to his Persia. On the way, he saw a saint, a holy man sitting on a rock. When he saw him, Alexander was attracted towards him. How he got attraction? By seeing the face of that saint. Serene, cheerful, calm, silent. So, he just wanted to go and meet him and talk to him. When he conversed with him, he found that saint was a great scholar. And then, immediately he thought, this scholar should be in my kingdom. It's a waste of time for him to stay here in this rock. So why not he come to my kingdom? So he began to tempt him. Look, I give a palace to you to live upon. There will be lots of servants to take care of you. Give all comforts, whatever you want. Plus something more I will give. Please come and stay in my kingdom. We need scholars like you. I want persons like you. When he was talking in this train, the saint was really a good saint. He was contented because he was desireless. He doesn't want anything of this world. So he simply laughed over it. Alexander was surprised. Why this man is laughing when I am offering so many things? Then the saint said, look, I don't want any of these things what you are offering to me. Why are you disturbing me? I am not aspiring for any of the things which you offered me. I am quite contented here. I am happy here. You go in your own way. But then he began to show his Rajasic temperament, Alexander. It is recorded in the Greek history. Swami Vivekananda has seen that incident in the archives when he visited Italy. Then the saint said, then the Alexander said, look, do you know who am I? His Rajasic quality began to pronounce. I am Alexander, the conqueror of this world. If you don't come, do you know what I will do? You do this word, indicating that you would kill him instantly if he doesn't follow his orders. When you do this word, the saint, he laughed more widely than before. He laughed profusely. What are you talking about? You want to kill me, who cannot be killed at all? Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, nachainam kledayantyapo, nashosayati marutaha. This Atman cannot be killed by. It cannot be wet. It cannot be burnt. It cannot be killed by sword. You can't do anything. It's immortal. And he told with so much clarity and fearlessness. The point is, he was utterly fearless. And he was well established in his realization. Truly he meant what he said. And this powerful assertion from the saint transformed the Alexander, and he became his disciple. So, a person who has realized become totally fearless. Abhayam, that's the quality. So if you devoutly observe the precepts of the scriptures, if you lead a life of right conduct, if you constantly remember God, you will become fearless. So, you must always be sincere in your efforts. So that is the quality of fearlessness, abhayam. Purity of heart, purity of understanding. Cleanliness of life or purity of heart. Purity of mind, that is giving up hypocrisy, to be truthful and straightforward in all dealings with people, and doing transactions with perfect honesty and integrity. That is purity of heart. A purity of mind cannot be obtained without devotion to the Lord. So they are all interlinked. Then comes the steadfastness in knowledge and yoga. Jnana yoga vyavastirihi. Understanding the nature of the self as taught in the scriptures and holy and by the preceptor. So there are many spiritual ideas in the Upanishads. We have to properly understand and meditate upon those ideas. So fearlessness, purity of heart, and steadfastness in knowledge and yoga are the three preeminent virtues among the sattvic attributes given in the verse 1 to 3, which I quoted just above. These three attributes are found in yogis also. The other qualities are common to jnana yogis, karma yogis, and Raj yogis. If you cultivate one virtue, all the virtues will cling to you by themselves. Fearlessness is the basis and foundation of the whole of person's moral structure within. Then dana, distributing food, clothes, etc., as far as it lies within one's power, according to one's means. Dhamma means control of the senses, self-restraint, self-control, control of the external senses. The practice of self-control annihilates the union between the senses and the sensual objects. He keeps his senses under the strictest restraint. He is moderate in his diet. He checks the outgoing tendencies of the mind and the senses. He induces the mind and the senses to turn backwards towards their own sources. As householders cannot practice perfect control of the senses, even moderation or regulated and disciplined life will constitute self-restraint for them. The practice of self-control includes forgiveness, harmlessness, truth, steadiness and patience. Then the yajna, fire worship, and the karmas, rituals enjoined in the Vedas, and also the sacrifice to the gods, Deva Yajna, Pitru Yajna, Bhuta Yajna. So many yajnas are enjoined in the scriptures which we should follow. Study of the Vedas in order to attain the absolute reality. Swadhyaya. Every day we must study the holy scriptures, because our tendency is to forget the good ideas. So in order to keep the mind ever pure, it is very necessary that we should read every day the spiritual ideas contained in the texts. Then tapas. True tapas is meditation on the self. It is fixing the mind on the reality. It is to turn the mind towards the soul. The mind is turned outwards, so mind is always engaged in the things of the external world. If the mind is turned inward, then it dwells on the inner self. The three kinds of tapas that are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita come under this category. Devadvija Guru Pragya Pujanam Shochamarjavam Brahmacharya Mahimsa Cha Shariram Tapa Uchyate Anudvega Karam Vakyam Satyam Prihitan Chayat Swadhyaya Bhisaran Chaiva Vangmayam Tapa Uchyate Manaprasadaha Somyatvam Maunamatma Vinigraha Bhava Samshuddhiritte Tattapo Manasamuchyate. Worship of the gods, the teachers and the wise, purity, straightforwardness, celibacy and non-injury, they are called auspicities of the body. Speech which causes no excitement, truthful, pleasant and beneficial, the practice of the study of the Vedas, are called austeritative speech. One should speak what is true. One should speak what is pleasant. One should not speak what is true if it is not pleasant, nor what is pleasant if it is false. This is called mental austerity. Then straightforwardness, arjavam. This is conducive to the attainment of knowledge. The aspirant should always be candid, upright, or straightforward. Straightforwardness should be his constant attitude. A just and truthful person alone can be straightforward. He is respected by the people, he is liked by all, he attains success in all his endeavors, he never hides facts or truth. Non-injury in thought, word and deed. By refraining from injuring living creatures, the outgoing forces of rajas are curbed. Ahimsa is divided into physical, verbal and mental. Speaking of things as they are without uttering unpleasant words or lies. This includes self-restraint, absence of jealousy, forgiveness, patience, endurance and kindness. Akrodaha, absence of anger when insulted, rebuked or beaten. That is, even under greatest provocation, we should not become angry. We should not become angry. Renunciation means tyaga. Literally, giving up vasanas, egoism and the fruits of action. Charity is also considered as tyaga. Peacefulness, serenity of the mind or tranquility. Apaishunam means absence of crookedness, aversion to slander and absence of narrow-mindedness. Daya, compassion to those who are in distress, A man of compassion has a tender heart. He lives only for the benefit of the world. Compassion indicates realization of unity or oneness with other creatures. Freedom from covetousness, non-covetousness, that should be cultivated. The senses are not affected or excited when they come in contact with their respective objects. The senses are withdrawn from the objects of the senses, just as the limbs of the tortoise are withdrawn by it into its own shell. Gentleness, then modesty, absence of fickleness, not to speak in vain, not to move the hands and legs in vain, avoidance of useless action. All this come under achapalam. Then vigor, tejas, vigor, energy, brilliance. The aspirant who is bent on attaining salvation marches boldly on the spiritual path. Nothing can tempt him or slacken his progress. This unbroken progress towards the realization of the self or the absolute is very important. It overcomes the downward pull of the tamas. Then forgiveness, kshama. He who is endowed with this virtue does not exhibit anger even when he is insulted, although he is strong enough to take a vengeance. He is unaffected by the insult or injury. Then fortitude. The sage absorbs within himself all calamities. He is steadfast even when he is in very trying and most adverse conditions. This is a particular sattvic vritti or state of mind which removes depression or exhaustion of the body and senses when they sink down. An aspirant who is endowed with this divine attribute never gets disheartened, even when he is under severe trials and difficulties and tribulations. Dhriti is a divine tonic when the body and the senses are in a state of low spirits or dejection. Then comes purity, shaucham. This is of two kinds, external and internal. External purity is done by means of earth and water. Internal purity, mind and heart, are free from maya, free from deception, lust, anger, greed, pride, jealousy, hypocrisy, likes and dislikes. Purity is achieved by the practice of celibacy, forgiveness, friendliness, charity, humility, nobility, love, complacency, compassion, etc. Absence of hatred, then absence of overweening pride. So the divine wealth consists of these 26 attributes. This is a rare gift from the Lord. This is an inexhaustible wealth which cannot be taken away by thieves or robbers, because they are enshrined in our heart. This Daivi Sampat helps the aspirant attain the imperishable and immaculate Brahmic seat. It is a shortcut to the realm of eternal bliss or moksha. So one should always try to cultivate the character. It is the character that makes a person perfect. So we must always focus on our character. The conduct of saints and the wicked is analogous to that of sandalwood and the axe. The axe cuts down a sandal tree, while the sandal tree in its turn perfumes the axe by imparting its virtue, fragrance to the axe. For this reason, sandalwood in the form of paste finds its way to the head of gods as tilak on the images of gods, and is loved by the world so much, while the axe has its metal edge heated in the fire and beaten with a hammer as punishment. Saints, as a rule, have no hankering for the pleasures of the senses and are the very minds of amiability and other virtues. They grieve to see others in distress and rejoice at the sight of others' joy. They are even-minded and look upon none as their enemy. Adveshta sarva bhutanam, as Lord Krishna says in the Gita. Everyone is friendly. Maitraha. Free from vanity and passion. They are conquerors of greed, anger, joy and fear. Tender of heart and compassionate to the distressed. They cherish guileless devotion to the Lord in thought, word and deed. They never swerve from the control of their mind and the senses. Religious duties and correct behavior, and never utter a harsh word. There is a famous episode in the life of a saint. Sant Eknath was very devoted to Lord Vishnu. So his ideas were very much liked by the people who would gather around him. There were some people who were jealous of the saint. So they engaged a person to insult him, somehow to make him angry. So when the saint went to take bath in the morning, after returning from the bath, this man who was hired upon, he was waiting. As soon as the saint was coming on the way, he spat on him for no reason. So like that it continued, 108 times it continued. 108 times he spat, and 108 times the saint took the bath. And that fellow was exhausted. He fell flat. He touched the feet of the saint. Master, please forgive me. I have so much insulted you, but you never uttered a single word, never rebuked me. I am really totally transformed by your behavior. Will you please forgive me? Then the saint says, what are you talking? Where is the question of forgiveness? You have given me the opportunity to take bath 108 times in the holy water. It's a great merit. So you should be thanked. So you have done a very good action. You gave me the opportunity to take bath 108 times, repeating God's name. So that is the sign of the saint. Never upset. Never got perturbed. So, it is the anger, that destroys the man. The worst enemy of the person is anger. Lot of crimes happening in this world are because of the anger. The whole Mahabharata war was conducted because of the anger. Revenge, pratishod. So one should be really very careful about cultivation of the good qualities, and one should be really very straightforward. It depends upon what type of people he becomes associated with. Sri Ramakrishna also has said, all the great masters have said, satsang, holy company, is very important to develop our true character. Satsang, retreats, they are all very helpful. Once Yudhishthira, Dharmaraja in the Mahabharata, he was talking to Bhishmacharya. He asked him, tell me, sir, everything about that from which spring anger and lust and fear and loss of judgment and inclination to do evil to others and jealousy and malice and pride and envy and slander and incapacity to bear the good of others and unkindness and covetousness. Bhishma said, these vices are regarded as very powerful enemies of all creatures. These approach and tempt men from every side. They goad and afflict a heedless man or one that is insensate. Indeed, as soon as these vices see a person, they assail him powerfully like wolves jumping upon their prey. From these proceed all kinds of grief. From these proceed all kinds of sin. Every mortal should always know this. I shall now speak to you of their origin, of the objects upon which they rest, and of the means of their destruction. Listen, O king, with undivided attention to the origin of anger, truly and in detail. Then Bhishma says, anger springs from covetousness. It is straightened by the faults of others. It is strengthened. It is strengthened by the faults of others. Through forgiveness it remains dormant, and through forgiveness it disappears. As regards lust, it springs from resolution. Indulgence strengthens it. When the man of wisdom resolutely turns away from it, it disappears and dies. Envy of others proceeds from between anger and covetousness. It disappears in consequence of compassion and knowledge of self. In consequence of compassion for all creatures, and of that disregard for all worldly objects, that knowledge brings in its train, it disappears. It also arises from seeing the faults of other people, but in men of intelligence it quickly disappears in consequence of true knowledge. Loss of judgment has its origin in ignorance and proceeds from sinfulness of habit. When the man whom this fault assails begins to take delight in the company and counsels of wise men, the wise at once and immediately hides its head. Men see conflicting scriptures. From that circumstance springs the desire for diverse kinds of action. When true knowledge has been gained, that desire has been allayed. The grief of an embodied creature proceeds from affection which is awakened by separation. When, however, one learns that dead do not return, whatever the grief one may feel for them, it subsides. Incapacity to bear other people's good, it proceeds from anger and covetousness. Through compassion for every creature, and in consequence of a disregard for all earthly objects, it is extinguished. Malice proceeds from the abandonment of truth and indulgence of weakness. This vice disappears in consequence of one's waiting upon the wise and good. Pride in men springs from birth, learning and prosperity. When those three, however, are truly known, that vice instantly disappears. Jealousy springs from lust and delight in low and vulgar people. In consequence of wisdom, it is destroyed. From error of conduct inconsistent with the ordinary course of men, and through disagreeable speeches expressive of aversion, slander takes its rise. It disappears upon a survey of the whole world. When the person that injures is powerful and the injured one is unable to avenge the injury. Hate shows itself, it subsides through kindliness. Unkindness proceeds from a sight of the helpless and miserable persons with whom the world abounds. That sentiment disappears when one understands the strength of virtue. Covetousness in all creatures spring from ignorance. Beholding the instability of all objects of enjoyment, it suffers destruction. It has been said that tranquility of soul can alone subdue all these faults. So we have to cultivate the values of life in order to be well established in the character. There are 4 values of life, of which moksha or liberation through self-knowledge is the 4th, is the final goal, final value of life. The other 3 are dharma, practice of virtuous righteousness, artha, attainment of prosperity, and kama, enjoyment of legitimate pleasures. Practice of dharma calls for an individual to perform the duties. Everyone is mandated to perform duties in life. One cannot escape from the duties. One has to purify himself through performing the duties. Artha implies acquisition of wealth necessary for the preservation of life and the promotion of the welfare of others. Kama is the enjoyment of legitimate pleasures, without which life becomes joyless and dry. The first three values must find their fulfillment in the fourth, that is self-knowledge, moral perfection, when not for the sake of self-knowledge, becomes nothing but enlightened egoism. Wealth and prosperity, when not used for the sake of self-knowledge, breed delusion and attachment. Art and aesthetics that do not reflect the light of the self degenerate into voluptuousness and promiscuity. Knowledge of science and technology, when not directed to the attainment of self-knowledge, proves to be a dangerous weapon of self-destruction. Therefore, the acquisition of wealth and the enjoyment of pleasures must be guided by dharma or righteousness and governed by the goal of moksha or self-knowledge. So, by practicing these values in life, we will be well established in the character. So what Lord Krishna says is that we must concentrate upon the divine qualities which are very important to cultivate, and that's the only way that one can overcome the suffering in this world. So, such a person has got true wealth of wisdom, peace and bliss. So all these ideas have been given by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, and also he has described the effects of bad karma and how they are put into great trouble and they are greatly punished because of their own bad actions. So we are pushed into suffering by our own actions, and we are raised up by our own actions. So actions play a very important role in everyone's life. What type of actions we are doing, that determines our life. So let us try to understand these things, try to develop character and acquire true wealth which is in everyone's heart: compassion, fearlessness, free from jealousy, hatred. All these qualities must be well established in one's life. That way we can march onwards in spiritual journey. Thank you very much. On Vijayadashmi Day, our construction activity will begin in our new temple site near Lemont Road. So the program will be in the morning, 10 a.m. It is Wednesday. This ceremony will mark the beginning of the construction. So let us hope everything goes well. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saviryam Karavavagai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavagai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. May the Lord protect us, may He nourish us, may our knowledge be fruitful and enlightened, may we not hate each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.